What if the most dangerous weapon in the American West wasn't the one drawn fastest, but the one no one ever saw coming? Not the Colt revolver on a gunfighter's hip, not the Winchester that won the West, but a weapon so unexpected, so misunderstood, that its deadliness can't be measured in body counts, only in the fear it left behind. When people picture the Old West, they imagine the usual icons: the Colt single-action army, the Winchester 1873, maybe a dusty double-barrel shotgun hanging over the bar of a saloon. But history's deadliest gun doesn't always fit into a holster or hang on a wall. Sometimes it hides in a gambler's sleeve. Sometimes it's so over-engineered it terrifies the man holding it. And sometimes it reaches so far that its bullet changes the course of nations. See, the word deadly meant something very different on the frontier. It wasn't just about how fast you could draw. It was about how a weapon could change power, fear, and even fate. The deadliest gun didn't always kill the most people. It was the one that shifted the balance, that made men think twice before stepping into the street, or wiped out entire ways of life from miles away. In this story, we're not chasing legends. We're uncovering reality, the forgotten weapons that reshaped the frontier in ways Hollywood never showed. Because while everyone remembers the revolvers that won duels and the rifles that won battles, few remember the ones that haunted both sides long after the smoke cleared. Today we'll look at 4 guns, each one deadly in its own way. A gambler's hidden secret, a Confederate's monster of a revolver, an inventor's doomed masterpiece, and finally, the rifle that silenced an entire civilization. Each one represents a different kind of terror, and together they reveal the true face of what deadly really meant in the Wild West. Part 1. The Remington Double Derringer. When you think of the Wild West, you probably picture revolvers with 6 long chambers, polished gun belts, and the flash of a duel at high noon. But the deadliest guns weren't always the biggest. Sometimes they fit inside a gambler's vest pocket, small enough to hide, but powerful enough to end a man's life before he could blink. The Remington Double Derringer was the West's quiet answer to concealed carry. 2 barrels stacked vertically, 2 chances to survive. Introduced in 1866, it fired a .41 rimfire cartridge, slow by modern standards, but deadly at card table distance. This wasn't a dueling gun, it was the last card in a desperate man's hand. At first glance, the Derringer didn't look like much, barely 5 inches long, weighing less than a pound. But that's exactly what made it so dangerous. In the back rooms of saloons, at poker tables and dance halls, the gun became a silent insurance policy. A gambler could lose every chip he owned, but if someone tried to take more than money, the Derringer offered a fast, final word. Remington's over and under design made it stand apart from the earlier single-barrel Philadelphia Derringers that had inspired it. 1 pull of the trigger, 2 barrels ready to speak in turn. It was compact, simple, and, for its time, surprisingly reliable. A man didn't carry it to win a fight. He carried it to end one. Legend ties the pistol to the infamous Doc Holliday, gambler, gunfighter, and companion of Wyatt Earp. Stories claim he died with a Remington Derringer under his pillow in a Colorado hotel room. But like many tales from the frontier, that one's mostly smoke. Historians have never found proof that Holliday owned one, and the story appears to have grown from pulp novels and early Hollywood scripts, not fact. Still, the rumor stuck, and with it, the Derringer's myth was born. It became the gun of the hidden hand, the gambler's ace, the final twist in a deadly game. You'll see it again and again in westerns, tucked in a lady's purse, strapped to a riverboat cheat's arm, or disguised as a belt buckle. Hollywood turned it into the weapon of surprise, the little gun that could change everything in half a heartbeat. By the late 1800s, more than 150,000 of them had been produced. They weren't military weapons or tools of the law. They were the gun of the untrusting, the hustlers, the saloon owners, the traveling showmen. If you were living by your wits, the Derringer was your silent partner. It wasn't the most powerful gun on the frontier, but it was one of the most intimate. Its deadliness came not from distance or power, but from proximity, a weapon built for whispers, not wars. And while it may have been small, It embodied one simple truth about the Old West. The man who could hide his gun usually didn't need to draw it twice. The Derringer proved that even the smallest gun could decide a man's fate. But not everyone on the frontier wanted something hidden. Some men wanted the opposite, a weapon so fearsome it could dominate the room the moment it was drawn. And that search for overwhelming power led to one of the strangest revolvers ever built. Part 2. The Lemat grape-shot revolver. If the Derringer was a weapon of whispers, the Lemat was a weapon of thunder. Where the gambler's gun was built for a single desperate moment, this one was built to dominate the battlefield and terrify anyone who faced it. The Lemat grape-shot revolver was one of the most ambitious firearms ever carried on American soil. Invented in 1856 by Jean-Alexandre Lemat, a French-born doctor turned arms designer, it was unlike anything before or since. Part revolver, part shotgun, and all audacity. It held 9 rounds in its cylinder, already 3 more than most pistols of the era. But at its center sat a second barrel, a smoothbore chamber capable of firing a load of buckshot. One pull of a pivoting lever on the hammer could switch the gun from bullets to a single blast of shotgun fire. In a world of 6 shooters, the Lemat gave its owner 10 chances, 9 bullets, and 1 devastating burst. No weapon better captured the imagination of Confederate officers during the American Civil War. Cavalry commanders like J.E.B. Stuart and General Braxton Bragg carried them into battle, while the gun's inventor was personally connected to Confederate leadership. He was the cousin-in-law of General P.G.T. Beauregard. Beauregard believed so deeply in the design that he helped fund production in Europe, where the guns were smuggled through the Union blockade and distributed to Confederate forces. It was a revolver for men who wanted an edge, and on paper, it offered one. But the Lemat's brilliance came with a curse. It was heavy, nearly 3 pounds loaded, and the complex mechanics made it prone to misfires and jams. Cleaning it was a chore, and spare parts were nearly impossible to find in the middle of a war. Still, those who wielded it swore by its power. One Confederate cavalryman wrote that it barked like a cannon and bit like a nest of hornets. Around 2,900 were produced, but fewer than half ever reached Confederate hands. The rest sat in European stockpiles, never fired in anger. After the war, the Lemat drifted into legend, a mechanical monster remembered more for what it could have been than what it actually was. Even today, stories like these show how ambition shaped the frontier in ways most people never hear about. If you want more of that real Wild West history, the kind that cuts through the myths, consider subscribing. It's the best way to make sure you never miss the stories Hollywood left behind. And yet, there's no denying its impact. The Lemat was the first revolver to truly combine multi-shot firepower with shotgun stopping power, a design concept far ahead of its time. Modern revolvers, combat shotguns, and even some experimental military sidearms can trace echoes of its ambition. It represented the moment when gunsmithing crossed the line from practicality into obsession, when inventors chased ultimate firepower no matter the cost. On the frontier, the Lemat never became common. It was too rare, too expensive, and too temperamental for daily carry. But its legend spread nonetheless. In saloon stories and later on the silver screen, the Lemat became a symbol of raw, reckless power. The kind of gun you'd only draw once, because there wouldn't be anything left standing after. If the Derringer was the weapon of personal fear, the Lemat was the weapon of spectacle. Loud, complicated, and unforgettable. It was the revolver that thought it was a cannon. And for a brief, chaotic moment in American history, it almost was. But not every deadly gun of the frontier roared like thunder. Some whispered through failure, strange experiments that promised to change the world and nearly destroyed their inventors instead. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the one that worked, it's the one that almost did. Part 3. The Volcanic Repeating Pistol. If the Lemat was a weapon of excess, the Volcanic was a weapon of obsession, born from genius, doomed by its own ambition. It looked futuristic for the 1850s. a brass-framed, lever-action pistol with a tubular magazine beneath the barrel. It promised something no one had ever seen before, a handgun that could fire repeatedly without reloading. On paper, it was revolutionary. In practice, it was dangerous to everyone involved. The volcanic repeating pistol was the brainchild of Horace Smith and Daniel Wesson, two inventors who would later create one of the most successful firearms companies in the world. Their idea was simple but radical. Combine a self-contained bullet with a lever action mechanism so a shooter could fire multiple rounds as fast as they could work the lever. No paper cartridges, no loose powder, no percussion caps, just speed. It was the bridge between the single-shot pistols of the early frontier and the repeating rifles that would define the West. But there was one problem: the ammunition. Smith & Wesson's new rocket-ball cartridge placed its powder inside the hollow base of the bullet itself. It looked clever, but it held almost no gunpowder. That meant poor velocity, weak impact, and unreliable ignition. In short, it was a repeating pistol that couldn't repeat reliably. Sometimes it jammed, sometimes it misfired, and sometimes it blew hot gas back into the shooter's hand. A weapon meant to change the world instead left burns and broken dreams. The business side was no kinder. The Volcanic Repeating Arms Company launched in 1855, full of hype and hope, but sales were miserable. The gun was too expensive for civilians and too underpowered for soldiers. Within a year, the company was drowning in debt. One of its main investors, a shirt manufacturer named Oliver Winchester, stepped in, bought the patents, and quietly rebuilt the idea into something far greater. That redesign became the Henry rifle, and eventually the Winchester repeating rifle, the very gun later celebrated as the rifle that won the West. So the Volcanic may have been a commercial failure, but it lit the fuse of an empire. A few thousand pistols were made, mostly in .31 and .41 caliber, with production split between Norwich, Connecticut, and New Haven. Today, collectors prize them for their rarity and their role in the lineage of the Winchester brand. But for the men who first tried them, the Volcanic wasn't a miracle of progress. It was a mechanical riddle that could turn on its owner without warning. The Volcanic pistol was proof that innovation in the West came at a price. It showed that the frontier's deadliest weapons weren't always the ones that worked best. Sometimes they were the ones bold enough to fail first. And though it never conquered the battlefield or the frontier, its descendants would. In that sense, every Winchester lever-action rifle ever fired carried a spark of the Volcanic's dangerous dream. The Volcanic showed how ambition could burn its own creators. But while some inventors chased perfection in the workshop, others forged weapons that rewrote the frontier itself. Because not every gun was designed for a duel or a gambler's trick. Some were built for distance, domination, and destiny. And no weapon changed more lives or ended more of them than the Sharps rifle. Before we step into that chapter, I'd like to know what you think. Which of these weapons has surprised you the most so far? Leave a comment with your pick below. I read through them all. Now let's meet the rifle that didn't just shape the frontier, it silenced it. Part 4, the Sharps Model 1874 Rifle. If the Volcanic pistol was the dream of innovation, the Sharps rifle was the reality of domination. It didn't whisper from a gambler's sleeve or roar from a cavalry charge. It spoke from miles away, and when it spoke, the entire frontier listened. The Sharps Model 1874 was the professional's weapon, a heavy, single-shot, falling block rifle designed for accuracy over impossible distances. Each pull of the trigger sent a large bore cartridge down a precisely cut barrel, often in .45-70 or .50-90 caliber. It kicked like a mule and thundered like artillery, but in the hands of a skilled marksman, it could hit a target the size of a man from over a mile away. That level of power wasn't just impressive, it was terrifying. Hunters called it Old Reliable, and for good reason. It was built for men who lived by precision, buffalo hunters, army scouts, and target shooters who trusted a single shot more than a volley. Unlike repeating rifles, the Sharps demanded patience. You loaded carefully, breathed slowly, and made every bullet count. On the Great Plains, that discipline made it legendary. The rifle's fame exploded after one unbelievable shot. In June 1874, at the Second Battle of Adobe Walls, buffalo hunter Billy Dixon aimed his .50 caliber sharps at a distant Comanche war party. He fired once and struck a warrior nearly 1,538 yards away. That's over 7/8 of a mile. The story spread like wildfire, a single bullet, a single breath, and a single death so distant that the sound of the shot reached the target after the man had already fallen. Whether luck or mastery, it proved one thing: the sharps had range that bordered on the supernatural. But the rifle's deadliness wasn't just measured in marksmanship, it was measured in extinction. The sharps became the primary tool of the buffalo hunters who scoured the Great Plains in the 1870s and 1880s. From dawn to dusk, crews of men lay prone on the prairie, firing into herds that stretched to the horizon. They killed for hides, not food. Thousands of animals a week, tens of millions within 2 decades. The rifle's accuracy meant the herds barely moved. Animals dropped before they even heard the shot. The once endless buffalo population, over 20 million strong, was reduced to almost nothing. That devastation had a second victim: the Plains tribes who depended on the buffalo for survival. When the herds vanished, so did their food, clothing, shelter, and independence. Many historians call the Sharps rifle the silent weapon of conquest, a gun that didn't just kill creatures, but cultures. Among native warriors, it earned a chilling nickname: shoots today, kills tomorrow. They said the bullet could reach you before the sound, a phantom force that made resistance feel hopeless. Owning a Sharps wasn't cheap. In 1878, it cost around $44, a fortune on the frontier. That price ensured it remained in the hands of professionals, the hunters, surveyors, and soldiers who shaped the edge of the American map. To them, it was an investment in certainty. If you hit what you aimed at, you survived. By the 1880s, repeating rifles had overtaken it, but the Sharps left a permanent scar. It had proven that precision could be more devastating than speed, that patience could erase entire nations. Its echoes still linger in the myths of the West, a reminder that progress and destruction often ride the same trail. The Derringer had made fear personal. The Lemat made it theatrical. The Volcanic made it mechanical. But the Sharps rifle made it existential. It wasn't the fastest or the loudest or the most famous, just the most final. Because when the Sharp spoke across the plains, there was no answering it, only silence. If you're still here at the end of the trail, thank you. You're part of the small group that actually wants the truth behind these stories. If you haven't already, subscribe before you ride on, because the next one might just change the way you see the West forever. From the gambler's sleeve to the endless plains, these 4 guns tell the same story, not of glory, but of consequence. Each one pushed the limits of what a man could hold in his hand, and each one left its own kind of scar. The Remington double Derringer made fear personal, a weapon for when there was nowhere left to run. The Lemat made fear theatrical, thunder in the palm of your hand, a revolver that thought it was a cannon. The Volcanic pistol made fear mechanical, proof that genius can misfire and even failure can shape the future. And the Sharps rifle made fear absolute, a weapon that silenced the plains and ended an entire way of life. The truth is, the deadliest gun of the West was never just one weapon. It was an idea that progress and destruction could be the same thing depending on who pulled the trigger. Every new design promised safety, speed, and power, but each invention came with a heavier shadow. That's what makes the story of the frontier so haunting. Because for every legend of courage and freedom, there's another story of silence, loss, and the terrible price of invention. And maybe that's what deadly really meant in the Old West. Not the number of shots fired, but the number of lives changed after the smoke cleared.